Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Natalie. I'm the Education Program Lead here at Banzai, and you have got our Progress Playbook webinar. So today's webinar, we're going to be talking about the Progress Playbook, using human achievement to motivate students and shape future careers. Just before we dive in, make sure if you can hear or you're having audio issues, check your device's settings. If you have any questions at any time, go ahead and throw those in the chat box. I will be monitoring those questions and we can save them until the end of the presentation to ask our guest, and then reach out at any time on social media. If you ever have any questions for us, we're at Teach Banzai, or you can visit us at banzai.org, or actually newly banzai.com. You've got the Progress Playbook, like I mentioned, and our guest is Jason Crawford, who's author of the Techno-Humanist Manifesto. And we're going to let Jason take it away and tell us all about his ideas on this subject, and we are really excited to hear.
Thank you so much. It is really great to be here and great to have so many of you. Thanks for taking the time to attend. I learned that in the test that I need to start the slideshow first, and then I can share my screen. And here we go. All right. Natalie, are the slides showing up okay? They're looking great.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep, they look
So
great.
thanks everybody. Yes, I'm Jason Crawford. I am the founder and president of the Roots of Progress Institute. And thank you, Natalie, for mentioning my forthcoming book, which will be you can read the first draft of on our website, and the published manuscript will be coming out next year from MIT Press. I'm really excited about that. So yeah, here to talk about progress in education. And I want to begin by telling a story about a young woman I talked to recently, and she gave me permission to use her name and sort of tell this part of her story. She graduated recently from college, but this is kind of what she told me about growing up and her education. She says, I learned about climate change in third grade. And she learned about it, not just the science of it, not just as a problem to be faced, but as really kind of doom, as an existential threat to humanity, something that was literally going to kill everybody. Um, and so to her, naturally, the future always seemed bleak. Her words for it, her feeling was, "You're going to die, and you have to fix that. And by the way, the adults around you don't even care. They left you with this problem. They're not going to fix it for you. It's all on you. Good luck, kids." So, you can imagine growing up that way, it was impossible for her to hope for any kind of a brighter future. She said it was always mitigation for the inevitable collapse which the older generations had created. So the best that could possibly be done was to stave off some kind of collapse, and not create any kind of a brighter future. Um, she is not alone. A recent survey just a few years ago of students, of young people around the world, found that more than half of them agreed with this question, the statement that humanity is doomed due to climate change. This was from a paper in The Lancet about climate anxiety, which was saying that more than half of those polled reported feeling sad, anxious, angry, powerless, helpless, and guilty, and that this was negatively affecting their daily life and functioning. Um, Now, it's one thing to, recognize problems and to be worried about them, but I don't think we're doing our students any favors by painting this as inevitable doom. I think we're really just creating a lot of anxiety and these feelings of helplessness rather than empowerment. After all, I mean, just imagine being one of these students. If humanity is doomed, why bother, studying for that matter, getting an education? Why bother trying to cure any diseases if we're all going to die of something else? Why even bother trying to invent new forms of clean energy if it's all on the wrong track and everything is doomed? Why bother investing in any kind of the future? Why bother investing in the future in any way at all? None of these things really make sense to students when they feel so hopeless. Now, I am not saying that we should teach optimism. I don't think optimism is the right framing because optimism can imply being blind to the reality of problems and challenges. It can imply, or it can turn into a sort of complacency, right? Denying or downplaying real risks and problems. And that's wrong because we do face real challenges, not only climate change, the risk of future pandemics, all the diseases we haven't yet cured, cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, mental health problems like distraction, anxiety, and depression, especially from media today and social media. Problems that AI might create, safety problems or social impacts. All of these are real challenges ahead, and we don't do anybody any favors by denying them or downplaying them. But I also think we don't do anybody any favors by creating this atmosphere of defeatism, where there are no possible solutions and everything is hopeless. I think just as we should not be blind to the reality of problems, we should also not be blind to the possibility of solutions. And so this embrace of both problems and potential solutions is what I've sometimes used the term solutionism for. It's just a third way between optimism and pessimism. Certainly between blind optimism and blind pessimism. Let's have our eyes open to both sides. Now, the best way that I know of to believe in the potential for future solutions, especially when we're not really sure exactly where they're going to come from, is the history of all of the problems that we have solved or at least made great strides on in the past. Maybe no problem is ever fully solved, but through humanity's history, we have made great strides on the problem of agriculture, of growing enough food to feed ourselves, the problem of protecting ourselves from disease, building safe and comfortable and clean homes for us to live in, and getting around the planet, just to name a few of the big ones. And you can see this in the numbers as well. Our World in Data tells this story of the last 2 centuries. And some of the key stories from the last 2 centuries are the decline of poverty, the rise of education and literacy, the rise of democracy, and improvements in vaccination, sanitation, and medicines that have decreased mortality, especially child mortality and maternal mortality. So these are really important stories that students often don't learn in school. We're not aware of these things. We take for granted all of the progress that we've made over the last couple hundred years, in part because we don't even see the problems anymore. We've solved the problems so thoroughly that they're now invisible. We don't see the piles of manure in the streets from all the horses that used to work our cities. We don't see the children who were stricken by polio and who, were paralyzed or deformed because of it. Again, just to name a few. And we tend not to teach these things in school. These topics are often omitted from the curriculum. They kind of fall between the cracks of history and science classes. Stephen Johnson, a popular author on science and technology and the history of those things, said that he was looking through an American history textbook, an otherwise good book. He said that the word labor appears over 200 times, civil rights well over 100 times, vaccines and antibiotics 0 times. So there's just something off about the balance here, something unbalanced in the emphasis. Charles Mann, author of a number of excellent books, most famous for 1491, proposed that all high school students should take a class called How the System Works that would focus on systems like our water system, water sanitation, our food system, energy, and public health. The theme, he said, would be that these systems are triumphs of the human mind and spirit. It should not be possible for so many terrific young men and women to not know anything about the systems on which their lives depend. I second that. Charles, by the way, recently wrote a really good series in the New Atlantis called How the System Works, where he's kind of laying out the beginnings of what would be the content for a class like this. Although that series just finished, and to my mind, nobody has turned it into a class yet. But this is where all of you can help. Teach these charts. Teach the stories behind them, the stories of the progress that we actually have made in the modern world. Teach students to feel some appreciation and gratitude for the relative health and comfort and safety that we enjoy compared to, so many of the people who lived in the past. And even that we enjoy now compared to many people who live in, lesser developed nations. Um, Teach both the problems and the potential for solutions. And just as previous generations stepped up to solve the great challenges facing them, teach the next generation that they too can step up and solve the problems of today and tomorrow. All right, that's my part. And I think now we'll turn it over to Heike, who will tell you a little bit about how we're starting to do this through one of our programs.
Great. Let me unmute myself and also make sure that I start my slideshow before I start sharing here. Let me see if that works. Where is my share button? There we go. Okay, and this did not share the slideshow, but can you see my slides, even if there's like stuff around it? Okay, cool. So we are, we've been thinking about what can we do as a, not-for-profit organization that's working on this problem to start making a difference and inspiring kids to think about problems that they can solve, inspired by the history of problem solving that humanity has done. And we're launching a new program this summer called Progress in Medicine. It's a summer career exploration for high schoolers. And I just want to give you a little overview of what it is. But basically, the premise is we want young people interested in solving these grand challenges that Jason talked about, health, sanitation for this summer program, but also other challenges, agriculture, aerospace, housing, all those problems, to have a place where they can think about what they want to do with their lives in this problem solution framework. So this is what this program is. It's about medicine. So if you have students who are interested in biology, medicine, biotech, anything related like that, this might be a way for them to get a glimpse of what that looks like this summer. It's a 6-week program, 5 weeks online, 2 hours a day, where we bring these teenagers together via Zoom, just like this, with a lot of interactive classes, and then 4 days at Stanford, where they get to tour some of the labs in Stanford, live in the dorms, and tour some biotech companies in the Bay Area, network with people that are building that better future. And the topics that we're going to cover, especially during the virtual coursework, align with what Jason was saying. We're going to tell them about the people that created the modern world in the field of medicine and biotech. So like sanitation. Every kid, even a toddler, knows that we wash our hands, right? But how did we discover that hand washing makes a big difference in how much we get sick or not? Preventing infectious diseases. Well, both through, cleaning up the water. We have really clean water now. We don't really worry about when we turn the faucet on in the developed world about catching disease from the water that we drink. Treating infectious diseases when we actually have them. Oop, I don't know what happened here. That is not what I wanted. Sorry. Treating infectious diseases, when we actually get the diseases, etc. And for each of these case studies, we're going to look into the past, learn about the people that solved the problem, make kids even aware of the problems. And then we talk to people who are solving the next generation of problems. So right now, we have clean water, but we don't have clean air. We all just suffer through COVID. We get the flu every year, colds. What can we do to actually clean up the air? And we'll bring in an expert who can talk about what we could do and the problems that kids could solve as part of that. So historical background, how life has changed, but then also hands-on applications. How do clinicians today work? So they get to play, put themselves in the shoes of a doctor, create treatment plans, think about what they would do to research ethics problems, and then get an exposure for what problems might they solve to hopefully inspire them, to think about problems they want to own, not just a way to make money when they graduate from high school. And we bring in a bunch of advisors. So we have each week that we have a case study, we have an advisor, they're professors from schools like Amish Ajala, who works on medicine, or Celine Halua, who founded a longevity company for dogs, Loyal, which we hope will resonate with teenagers. Somebody from the FDA, and somebody who's Jake Sweat, solving the problem of clean air, just like we solve clean water. But that's not all of it. We do think that teens benefit when they talk to other young people that are just, 10, 15, 20 years ahead of them. So we have a whole group of near-peer mentors. They can choose some of these near-peer mentors and meet with them in small groups and ask them questions about what does it mean to build a better healthcare system? Or you, Vasilis, wanted to become a doctor, but now you're freezing organs? That's super interesting. So they have a chance to meet this diverse group of mentors, both practitioners like NICU nurses, emergency physicians, functional medicine physicians, and people that built, technology around making progress in medicine. And then they get to spend 4 days on Stanford. We'll make an in-person connection. This is a lot about community between kids to immerse them in that problem solution mindset. Do lab and company tours, and we'll have a networking event where they get to meet a bunch of builders in the Bay Area. So that's the main thought part. And then we end with another week of virtual classes where they do some writing and reflecting on what they have learned, write a personal narrative essay with coaching and feedback by this man, Mike Riggs, who is a accomplished editor and writing coach. And they'll create an essay that they can use for college applications or for applications to scholarships or other opportunities that might come their way. So that's kind of our take. Immerse them for 6 weeks in that problem solution story and see what they take out of it and whether that helps against the doomerism. And we're looking basically for ambitious high school students that have a, appetite for an academically rigorous program. They should be interested in this field specifically, and they should be, grappling with the question, what do I want to do with my life after high school? So if you have students like that, do feel free to refer them to this. Our priority deadline is this Sunday, but we will accept applications so March 31st. And we do have scholarships available, so they can just declare in the application that they need scholarships for the tuition for this program. That is all that I had, and I think we are now open for questions.
Yes, I would love to do a Q&A, and I actually want to start out by asking the teachers that have joined us, are you feeling a sense among your students of this doomerism that talked about? Do you feel like your students are feeling optimistic for the future? Are they feeling, what's the pulse in the classroom? If you want to drop that in the chat, I would be just curious to see where your students are at, and are they feeling optimistic, or I guess the better word is solutionist. I love that idea. I'd be curious just to see where people are at. And while we're waiting for that, oh, okay, we actually have a definitely doomerism on climate, AI, and the future. Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions, frankly, about things we haven't been through before, right? So thank you. Sienna, hopefully I'm saying that right. I apologize if I'm not. Go ahead and answer as well if you feel like anyone. And I'd be curious, Jason, for your thoughts. Is there one sort of high level thing that a teacher in any subject, we have a lot of financial literacy teachers here for Banzai. We do college and careers, we do digital citizenship, different things like that. Is there one sort of high level action that teachers can take, or I guess think about as they're putting together their lesson plans that would help cultivate this attitude of solutionism?
One simple thing I would say, if beyond, maybe creating a whole new curriculum or new topics to add, a really simple thing I bet you could do is just make sure you have been to the site Our World in Data and use it as a resource for any of your teaching. It's a great resource for teachers, has all kinds of data and charts and articles, very readable articles about all kinds of issues affecting the world. They are, they try to be kind of a pretty neutral, we're just reporting on the situation. So they're not pushing a message of optimism or doomerism. But it turns out a lot of the topics, if you look over the long term, have gotten better. Not all of them, but like a lot of them. So if you're teaching anything in your classes and I would just recommend looking it up on Our World in Data and seeing if they have an article on it and if they have some charts you can use and some history. And I think you will often find they will report on the true situation, and they will also, maybe sometimes point to, where things might be improved in the future.
Okay, awesome. One question here that Lynette sparked for me. Lynette said that students don't have the necessary initiative to look for answers or create new things. Do you have ideas for kind of sparking that initiative in them? Is it sharing those stories of look what humans have done and just helping them understand there are big problems we have solved, and maybe that will motivate them, or do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, I'm looking over some of the comments here and seeing it's sad to see how many kids are worried about AI when I think is one of the things that can really empower young people today, empower them to easily learn anything they want. I mean, asking AI for reading sources, or to, give me an intro to this topic and point me to some resources, or help me learn how to do something, or help me code up a new website. AI is now at the point where it can create apps and websites for you. Any idea that you have, you can try it out. Um, Teens should be much able, better able to put things out there into the world, start, small businesses, learn new topics. It really should be very empowering for them. So, maybe if they can start to see that, they will feel a little more like the future is one of agency. Yeah, Heike, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think, if I think about, I have two teenagers myself, and obviously they grow up in my household, so they hear all the solutionism stuff. But I would say just whenever, in whatever lesson you're teaching, you can call out the things that were really bad in the past that we have made better. And that could happen in any subject, right? You read a book and it talks about, like, a child who dies young in the history, right? Or talks about the horses, or, whatever it is. Put it in the framework of actually pointing out how much worse life was in the past and how much better it has gotten, right? If you teach science, too often, at least in my kids' science education, we just teach the kids what we know, right? So we know that we have catalysts that facilitate, chemical reactions. How do we find out? What problems did that new insight solve? Like bring in stories like, catalytic reactions, the Haber-Bosch process, which created fertilizer when we were running out of fertilizer and people were worried about worldwide starvation in the late 1800s, is a great example of, actually creating solutions and people that created solutions. So like tell the solution stories wherever you find them. Tell the stories of people that have made that difference. I used to work for a company called Mystery Science. I don't know if any of you know Mystery Doug. I don't know if we have any elementary school teachers here, but we did elementary science curriculum for elementary kids, video based. And a lot of the stories we told were very simple around problems in the world that ingenious people fixed, like somebody who saw that there were a lot of traffic accidents on the street and they came up with the idea of a traffic signal to actually make traffic flow more smoothly across the intersection. That had to be invented. That's not obvious that that had to be invented. So wherever you can find those stories, if you have elementary school kids, Mystery Science, Mystery Doug is a really great resource for that as well. But I think the storytelling of people just like you saw problems in the world and they fixed them. Not just here's the solution we now have, but somebody created this and you could be somebody that creates that kind of thing, I think is super helpful.
I'll also point you to some of my so in my essay series that's going to become a book. I have a chapter titled Solutionism, and I tell a number of stories of, big problems that were facing the world. Like in the late 1800s, it looked like we were going to run out of fertilizer and there was going to be famines everywhere because the population was growing too fast. And what happened was we invented synthetic fertilizer, and that's, saved the world from famine. I tell some other stories like the invention of the catalytic converter that helped solve the smog problem from automobiles, and a number of other things. So I think there might just be some stories there of people facing big problems and solving them. So I'll paste those links in the chat too. I just shared a couple two articles. Thank you, Natalie, for reposting one when I put it in the wrong place. But two articles from Our World in Data. Which are great intros to the subject, and then that'll get you to the Our World in Data site and all their charts and everything.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks so much. I've seen a few questions in the chat, people talking about AI, students feeling threatened for their future job security or perhaps the environmental impact. Is it helpful as teachers to reframe both of those as, again, solutions, like problems with a solution that can be a new solution that can be found? That's one idea, but I'm not the expert, Jason.
Yeah, for sure. I think uh so I mean, on environmental issues, I think there are some good, stories of environmental successes in the past. Especially in developed countries, air pollution, for example, has come down a lot. I mean, we passed Clean Air and Clean Water Acts several decades ago. We did do things like the catalytic converter and have improved air quality. Um, The ozone hole, by the way, is also a sort of a pretty good success story, right? We kind of noticed what was happening, and we got rid of the chemicals that were causing the problem, and probably avoided a whole lot of skin cancer. Leaded gasoline, is another good sort of environmental contamination story. We figured out what was going on with the lead in the gasoline, and we switched to unleaded fuels. And lead exposure has come way down. So there are a bunch of things that we've solved in the past, and I think if we sort of apply the same attitude, we can continue to solve such problems.
Thank you. Yeah. What about motivating students to even care? If they're at this level of doomerism, or just feeling like stuck in this problem cycle, it can be hard to even, motivate them to want to go find a solution or to even see it. I loved what Heike said about really understanding that everything we have, our stop signs, our stoplights, whatnot, there was a problem there, and that someone searched and found a solution. And our solutions are everywhere when you're looking for them, but how do we motivate kids who I saw a comment here about, struggling to find their passion. They don't even know what they like to do. That could be a sucked into a phone vortex situation, but like, how do we get the students into the real world to notice those things even?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can jump on that. Like one of the things that Laura, who's our core teacher at the Progress in Medicine program, always talks about is like wherever you look, just, encourage your kids. Maybe this is an exercise you can do with your kids. I'm very much thinking about medicine because we're having the summer program, but have them go to their parents' medicine cabinet, pick any random medicine that's in there, like Tums or Tylenol or, even Leukotape or whatever it is, and go to any of their favorite LLMs and say, give me a history of like how Tylenol came about, right? Just any random thing. And obviously you as a teacher will have to talk with them, but it's funny. Whenever I feel really down, I look for the stories of the little inventions around me where people saw a problem and then found a solution that's ingenious. I was just posting in my Substack on, when you're in a car, you have the tank and there's a little triangle next to it that shows you which side of the car the tank is on. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed it, but there's a little triangle. Somebody had to invent that little triangle. And it came about because there was an engineer at Ford who had a car that was not his own. It was raining. He pulled up to the gas station. He had pulled out the wrong side. He got wet and he became frustrated. And he wrote up a memo, sent it to his higher ups at Ford and said, if we put a little triangle right next to the gas tank, we could solve that problem for people. And the engineers at Ford listened, they put it in place, and most other car manufacturers followed and did the same thing. Now it's a tiny little thing, right? Like this is not a world-changing problem. But I think one of the key things that I see when Jason writes about progress, or there's a bunch of other writers in the broader progress movement of which we are a part, is wherever you look in the world, whatever is good in the world, even something as simple as like an aluminum can or whatever it might be, right, that you're looking at. Somebody saw a problem and found a solution. And if you can just orient your kids in your classroom to that mindset of like everything around you was built. People just like you invented that little triangle, right? Or people just like you came up with better packaging that's easier to open, or, whatever it might be. That's just an attitude that I think is like psychologically very healthy because you don't have to solve climate change by yourself. You can make a small improvement, and all these small improvements that people make, all these little fuel triangles, right, add up to a much better world. And then it doesn't sound like, oh my God, if I can't solve all of climate change, I'm doomed, right? I can make a small thing here. And I can do it wherever I want to do it, right? Like you're interested in fashion. You can create clothes that fit people of a certain body type better, right? Like wherever you look, if you have that attitude, you can find worthwhile things of working on.
Yeah, I love that. Jason, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that's great.
Okay, perfect. We just have a few more questions. I'm curious for the teachers here, while they're talking and you're hearing about this, have you had any light bulbs go off about ways that you can integrate this into your classroom, whether it is, the personal finance classroom? That's always where my mind goes, and I'm thinking, okay, what are the problems that we've had in the past, and how have we solved those when it comes to personal finance? And there are so many, right? Same thing with college and career prep or whatnot. So I'd be curious to know if any teachers have wheels spinning about problems and solutions that they can point at in the past to help students feel better about the futures of those two things. Um, so if you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear those in the chat. And then also we've got a question here. What are some exciting career paths that we can encourage students to pursue in a world that's changing so quickly?
I do think the world is going to change faster in the future than it has changed in the past. So I do think that in some sense, you know, being adaptable and able to learn are going to be more important in the future than they've been in the past. Again, yeah, certainly teaching them how to use AI, and how to use it for personal empowerment, not trusting everything it says, not doing everything it tells you to do, but using it as kind of an advisor and a pointer to resources, is great. Um, a while ago, I gave a talk directly to a group of high school students, again, trying to convey this idea that we've solved many problems in the past and there are big opportunities on the horizon. And the ones that I pointed to were AI itself and applying it to solve many of the world's problems and create and pursue new opportunities. Um, Energy, the world is going to need a lot more clean, abundant, cheap, reliable energy for everybody. Um, and Opportunities in bio, and that's part of why we did health and bio as the first vertical. So I noticed somebody, by the way, asked, Joy asked, will you develop similar programs for other fields? Yes, we would love to. This is our first pilot, and assuming this goes well, we'd love to branch out into many different fields. But I think we are right. The future of biotech and medicine and health is there's a lot of exciting things on the future, on the frontier, and I think that's a really fruitful area for the coming decades.
And I'll add, just having talked to these amazing near-peer mentors and having interviewed them. By the way, there's bios for all these near-peer mentors on our website, rootsofprogress.org/progress in medicine that you can share with your students. I think one of the things that really struck me is how much you can maybe lift the weight of their shoulders by making it clear to them that they don't have to have a very clear career path in mind and know exactly how things go. I think a lot of the stories that I hear from these highly accomplished, 25 to 35-year-olds is they were just curious and always looking for things. And many of them have taken like swiveling paths, right? Like I briefly touched on Vasilis. He did pre-med, realized that he loved the challenges in electrical engineering more, became an electrical engineer with a minor in bio, and now he's building organ cryopreservation machines to prevent organs from spoiling between donations with the big vision ultimately of just cryopreserving humans, where we don't have capabilities to curing them now to a time when they can actually be cured, right? Like big, huge, crazy, ambitious things. But like he was willing to go with like he was willing to be self-aware of what do I actually enjoy, not that what does society want me to do, not what my parents want me to do, not like I become a doctor because everybody in my family became a doctor and that's prestigious, but like, ooh, I like this particular type of problem. So to the extent you can help your students think about like what what type of problem in the world are you excited about? And what type of things that you're doing are actually really important, and then just instill in them that like one of the wonders of being in the United States of America or just North America in general is if you're very clear on those kinds of things, even in the world of AI, you can probably make a career out of it, right? Like the more you think about problems you want to solve rather than titles or clear straight career path, I think the more adaptable you're going to be in a world of AI because the problems will be around more than like I want to be like a paralegal, right? Like whatever the problem is, I think that's a better attitude to take.
Yeah, I love that. I don't think I've ever said what problem am I really excited about. But I love that twist on things, right? Because it is easy to see problems, and I love this idea of looking for solutions. So we have a few comments from teachers. Daniel says entrepreneurship comes to mind. I think that's going back to my question of, reframing things. The little triangle story on the dashboard. Yeah, and not even an entrepreneur per se. And I think there are students who know they want to start some sort of a business and be an entrepreneur. And I know a lot of people who own businesses and they kind of fell into that same way of, oh, wait, I see something and here's a good idea for it. And then Alice says, as a counselor, we are constantly trying to find solutions for our students, but I realized I don't directly talk to them about the concept of finding solutions. Definitely thinking about and wanting to dig into solutionism. And then Wendy says, students need to find their talents and passions. Potential employers can teach them the skills needed. So yeah, I love that, those ideas of just making sure we're taking it back a step and seeing the problem, either get excited about a future problem to solve or pointing out the problems that have been solved. Um, Really great. Jason's adding some awesome links in the chat as well. Teachers, do we have any more questions for our guests? Please go ahead and drop those in the chat and we will ask. Okay, Melinda says, I have asked my students to identify a problem that really bugs them, and then I ask them what they can do to fix the problem. Yeah, I love that. Just the idea of thinking through problems. Sounds like this is a worksheet we need to make for our college and career offerings to have a, thinking through problems or things that bug you and what could be a potential solution, and just realizing there are so many more solutions to come, right? Sometimes I feel like we are so advanced as a society, it's easiest for us to think like we've peaked, but there's still so much more good that can happen, right? Um, I think question probably for Jason or Heike here. What are your thoughts on the ethics of AI? Is it something we should fully embrace? And I guess how I would offer how to also teach those to students.
Yeah. I think AI is a technology with such very broad and powerful applications that um, the ethics of AI is almost not one thing. AI is going to create a whole host of social issues and ethical issues, and we're going to have to deal with all of them. Um, I think AI has the potential to, be massively good for humanity and massively empowering, but it also has the potential, for, like a lot of technologies, for a lot of abuse, and creates a lot of costs and risks. So, um, I can't possibly list them all, but I'll just throw out, one that maybe especially teachers should think about. I think AI has the possibility to either make us to say put it to oversimplify or put it a little crudely. It can make us a lot smarter. It could also make us a lot dumber. And coming back to this, right, it can make us a lot smarter if we use it to augment our thinking, not to substitute for our thinking, right? It can make us dumber if we just kind of listen to anything that it says, allow it to hallucinate wrong answers, don't check, don't think for ourselves, right? But if you use it as a kind of research assistant, in essence, right? Give me an intro to this subject, point me to, books to read and articles to read or videos to watch, answer my follow-up questions, right? And then you kind of also push back on it when something doesn't quite make sense, or ask different AIs, right? There's a bunch of good ones out there, and you can ask for second opinions and things. So if you kind of take responsibility, I think too in public discourse, right? AI has creates a lot of slop. It can create a lot of BS or misinformation, but it can also be a fact checker. It can be again, it can help people sort of evaluate different claims. So I think that part of it is on us as individuals to use AI in good ways. Part of it is on the people who design AI products to try to design them for a better knowledge environment, a better information environment, not a worse one. And so these are all issues that we all kind of have to think about in our own role and at our own level. Heike, you want to add something?
Yeah. First of all, Alice, I think you're really right. AI is kind of like cars at the beginning, right? Like every new technology creates a bunch of problems and a bunch of uncertainty and a bunch of disruption, and we have to live with that. But also building on what Jason said, you as teachers have such a unique opportunity to model the right way of using these tools, right? Like I'm the mom of two teenagers, and I hear a lot of them from how many, many of their peers use AI to cheat on tests and have it do their homework. Now, as Jason was saying, there are more and more limits built in. Like ChatGPT allegedly will now refuse to just do your homework for you and go into tutoring mode. I don't know how good that is and how well that works. But for kids, there's a lot of good ways of doing that. Like my son struggles with math, and he uses ChatGPT extensively to explain things with him. Just last night, he had a physics test this morning. He just mentioned as an aside that he had taken the practice problem that the teacher gave him, had fed them to ChatGPT, not to solve them for him, but to create another worksheet for him. So he had different values and slightly different versions of those problems that he could practice on to actually do better on the test. And I think, you know, as parents and teachers, thinking through how we model the constructive use of AI that makes us smarter rather than offloading our thinking and becoming dumber is a really important challenge that we should embrace. And also, we should talk about AI. I love that, like cars at the beginning, you know, make it clear to kids that they understand like the AI we have now is like, you know, maybe the Ford Model T. It's not like the modern cars and the variety we have. It will evolve a lot, it'll change the things. And yeah, horses were put out of work, but they still exist, you know, in different ways, and we use them in different ways today. So I do think our attitudes on how we think about this and how we model that to the young people in our lives make a big difference.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you both for your answers. I love the idea of using AI, teaching it as an augmentation and not a substitute for thinking. In a past life, I used to be a news reporter, and one thing I would always ask at the end of any interview was, what should I have asked, but I didn't? And that's actually a great question to ask AI. If you're working on a project, you're writing an article, you're doing anything for even your students creating a lesson plan, teaching your students to go to AI and say, what am I missing here? Or what do I not understand? Or what could be even a tangential idea that could spark some interest or whatnot. And like you said, using it for those types of purposes. We had a few really great comments here. Daniel said that Massachusetts has a civics action requirement where students do this very thing. They look around for a problem in their community to solve, but we've never started with the story of things that got solved. I think a short history of that would be inspiring and help them think bigger. And I agree. I think that's really the key is starting with these empowering stories, even just the tiny little ones. They do make you feel like hopeful, right? And that solutionism approach. So really, really great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This has been an awesome conversation, such a great topic. I'm so glad that we got to learn about this amazing opportunity for students, and it sounds like there will be more in the future.
Thank you
Um,
all. It's been a great crowd, and so glad that we got a chance to talk to you.
Right.
yeah,
And
and
if you're a high school teacher, you know, do encourage your students to check out the program. Somebody asked, like, how do you even find out what you're passionate about, you know, in your careers? The summer program is a great way to get an overview of a bunch of cool careers in bio, health, medicine, longevity, health policy. So if somebody's even remotely curious about this, encourage them to check it out.
yeah, perfect. And I'll also direct our teachers to our Banzai college and career resources. Our career field quiz can be a fun way just for students to explore different ideas that they are interested in. But we also have, you know, cost of college, paying for college, scholarships, different courses like that. And then, of course, we have high school personal finance resources that I know a lot of our teachers are familiar with. And then we have entrepreneurship courses as well. Wanted to let y'all know about two conferences we're going to be at this month, just in case any of our teachers are there. Please come say hi to us. We would love to see you. We're going to be at the AASA National Conference on Education in Nashville, booth 951, at the end of next week. And then at the beginning of next week, should have put those in order. I'm actually going to be at IdeaCon in Chicago, booth 1121. Just a reminder that you'll get a follow-up email after this webinar, probably sometime tomorrow or the day after that, that will give you a link to a survey. You can submit that, add any questions or comments you have. We love to hear from you, and then you'll receive a certificate, a PT certificate in your inbox. And if you need to learn more about Banzai, you can use these QR codes, take a screenshot or pull your phone out if you're not watching on it, and go through our Banzai Basics PD walkthrough, or just schedule a free call with our teacher support team. And we'd love for you to follow us on social media so you can keep track of all these other opportunities that we have, upcoming webinars. Thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you to Jason. Thank you, Heike, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you again.